Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. This guy, what's his name? Respect Your Intellect, has done a response to my response to his 20 questions Flat Earthers can't answer. And it's just typical of the globe Earth proponent who believes that they are regurgitating science. Now, the first thing, I have to pull this disingenuous twat on, and his inability to actually listen to the responses, was his rebuttal that I claim that science is a religion. No, I did not claim that. And Flat Earth researchers or people investigating the globe demand science. We keep talking about giving us measurable proof. Science. And this is the problem. You think that Flat Earthers are defending a religion when we're trying to tell you that the globe is a belief that has been adopted by what is called science, and then but then that's scientism. It's the belief in the globe and the belief in gravity, which is just a translation or conversion of weight into this abstract idea that you can stick to the outside of a sphere. That is scientism. It's not science, because science, or let's be more specific, let's say physics, is the measure of substance. Now, throughout his rebuttal video, he goes on about, oh, the same old stuff. It's been proven thousands of times, thousands of years ago, blah, 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 with observations. And of course, we know that observations are governed by perspective, but does not come up with one single piece of measurable proof. Just a repetition of this idea that things have been, the globe has been somehow proven through you know, hundreds or possibly thousands of years of observations. And again, talking about the Aristophanes experiment and things like that. And basically, either if you can handle it, go and listen to the guy, and then listen to what I tried to give were, oh dear, I don't, it's like you guys who get it, you understand it, yeah. People who just want to defend the globe will make their own interpretation. It is infuriating. It makes me mad, because no matter how much you try to explain that the globe is nothing but a bunch of explanations to fit a belief, and it's not measurable proof, it's not demonstrable proof, they can't get it. And it's funny because people keep referring to this model, but there's, okay, where do I start? I've already started, but how do I go on? Yeah, no measurable proof of curvature on the surface of the Earth. All these ideas about curvature are interpretations of perspective, every single one of them. And they're all about observations in the sky, ignoring perspective, and turning perspective into an imaginary curve. Gravity isn't a force that can be measured coming out of the Earth. You need to have a mass. And what is measured? The rate of acceleration. So the time it takes for something heavy to fall through the air is what's called a measurement. No, it has to be a measurement of this alleged force. Like, you can measure the amps pushing electricity through a wire with a variety of different instruments, or you can demonstrate it with a light bulb. Yeah, this kind of demonstrates practically that there is a force pushing the electricity through, which they call amps. Yeah. Yeah, and you can measure it in many different ways. A godless engineer was doing a live broadcast, so I ask on there, so where is the measurable proof that down becomes a different direction? You know, just because the globe model has down going towards the centre of it, of the alleged spherical Earth. And there was this look of confusion on his face, like he'd never thought about it before. And of course, you know, you have some smart aleck in the chat replying, oh, it's all relative. Down is always down towards the centre of the force of gravity, blah, blah, blah. But these are all just imaginary answers and explanations for an imaginary scenario. You keep asking for measurable proof. Tell us, show us where. Here I am in Thailand on the equator, okay? So we can see where down is for me, yeah? Perpendicular to the direction I'm heading right now, yeah? Now, is there any way that anyone can practically demonstrate or measure that if I was suddenly on a road in the UK, that down is any different? Now we understand that you then obfuscate level as being anywhere you like on a sphere, because you're imagining a sphere in space and down is always relative, blah blah. We get it, we understand the concept. The point is, can you demonstrate and prove that and measure that as being our reality? That if I move from here in Phuket, I fly or travel or whatever, anywhere you like, or just instantly teleport to the UK or somewhere else north of the equator, has down become a different angle, as illustrated in any kind of side-on view of a globe or a sphere or a circle? Sure, you can illustrate it, you can say model it, but can you measure it and prove it in reality? Oh, and this dickhead on the 20 questions guy goes on about the difference in the weight of things at the equator compared to other places in the Earth. Have you actually gone and measured it? Have you ever done it? We understand that in the model, based on the spin and centrifugals, centripetal whatever forces, that's the result that you can calculate based on your model. But has anyone actually gone and measured this so-called difference? Has anyone actually measured that a kilogram weighed in somewhere up north is any different to a kilogram weighed on the equator? Has anyone actually gone and done that? No, they have not. A kilogram is a kilogram wherever you are on the Earth. Excuse me, I need water. Right, I've got some here, hang on. Now, you could possibly go to different locations. For example, on the equator, it's very hot. And then you could go to, say, somewhere around Antarctica, where it's very cold. And you might be able to measure a difference in weight. And oddly enough, what you would get in a hot place like the equator is possibly less weight. Something might weigh less here than it does in a cold place. Why? Because hot air rises So all that air and air pressure, if you just go and look, air pressure in hot places is less than the air pressure in cold places. Why? Because cold air goes down. It's got nothing to do with gravity. Hot and cold air, hot air rising and cold air dropping, has nothing to do with gravity at all. Gravity, you know, so there is, for a start, that just demonstrates that gravity doesn't exist. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't hold things down. It doesn't even hold air down. Just cold air is denser and pushing down, so it actually might make things weigh a little more in cold places, which happen to be called the poles, than they do in hot places, which happens to be on the equator. Oh dear. So, I mean, that's kind of what's infuriating about the whole thing, is because there are alternative scientific explanations, but they all just so happen to kind of correlate with this idea of a spinning globe, in which they decide to put the pole at the top. And this was another point of mine, or any flat earther, about the whole idea that we've got this spinning molten core creating a magnetic field in the center of the Earth, is that you know what, again, if you're going to talk about a sphere not having an up and down, you know, it's funny how when it comes to gravity and level, there's no up and down on the sphere, there's no down, down is all relative, etc. Yeah, so you could be anywhere on your sphere, Earth, and it's all relative, there's no up and down. Yet the globe has a top and a bottom, a north and a south pole, and suddenly you've got a top and a bottom, whereas in other cases, in your compartmentalized arguments for the globe, there is no up and down. Yeah. This is what you'll find, is it all comes down to these compartmentalized arguments, and taking what is known in physics to be some kind of fact, or repeatable science, and then adapting that to the globe model, such as the inverse square law applying to gravity, etc. But this is the thing, when you try to put all these compartmentalized pieces together, like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, in what is called the heliocentric model, that is when you realize it is not a working model. It is not a scientific model. It is only a mathematical model based on observations. Again, interpreting observations. And of course, what the Globe Earth Defender wants is alternative answers. Well, they want explanations. They have explanations which again are not backed by science, but appear to be, because they borrow bits and pieces of science in these compartmentalized explanations. But of course, what they want is an alternative explanation with the measurable proof that they ignore when it comes to the globe. So the flat earther is under duress to come up with not only explanations, sorry about the coughing, I just should have had some water before I came out. You know, there's the demand for the flat earth to come up with alternative explanations, and science to compensate for their explanations, which aren't backed by science. Oh dear. So I do like what Owen Benjamin's doing, or what's being highlighted by. You see, he understands humans. he understands the human element of it. And we don't have to be physicists. We don't have to be mathematicians. The problem with you have to be a jack of all trades, and you have to understand humans in order to understand how we have been mistakenly led to believe that we live on a globe, and how we've been convinced that it's some kind of science when it's not. But it's so, Owen Benjamin sees how us humans have been swayed to adopt a belief in the globe. And it just becomes more and more apparent, and it kind of becomes a little bit easier to explain. But you've got your hardcore globers who they just don't listen. I mean, this is what my original point with the respect. It's funny. Respect your intellect. I mean, if you were really intellectual, if you were really intellectually honest with yourself, then you would admit, or you would be able to see, you would actually try to see that these kind of models, per se, I don't like using the word anyway, because it just kind of it does box you into a thing, but these models are interpretations, and so we can, intellectual honesty will allow you to see that for example, watching the stars go overhead, or the sun, or the moon, really is a matter of interpretation. And so you can make these different models based on the observations that we make, but none of them are based on any physical measurements. Apart from the obvious fact that the flat Earth model, per se, well, this is it. The flat Earth model, if you like, is one of perspective. Observations perspective is accounted for in the observations of stars, such as Polaris and all the other things. So it's understood that the horizon isn't a physical thing. It's an optical phenomenon that occurs when we look across a flat surface. Yeah. And then you take perspective into account for any and all observations made, and that's your model for the Earth, as far as we know for sure, the dimensions or the limits or the geography of the Earth we're on. Yeah. And same with azimuthal maps, equidistant maps, because the azimuthal map is it just puts you at the center, or calls the center, the North Pole, the center, and says that's your center. So all the other directions and everything, the azimuth is based on the North Pole being the center. But this is the thing, wherever you are on the Earth is your center. And this is what the globers can't grasp. But of course, the heliocentric model attempts to deny that you are at the center, while taking observations and trying to turn that into an objective reality. But really it's still your subjective observations that are translated into this objective reality. Again, perspective being the imaginary curve. But I tell you what's happening is these globe Earth proponents are showing and demonstrating more and more their inability to detach from their dogmatic belief. This is actually a good thing, because it really shows again the human nature of the whole situation, where we have been given a belief to stick to, told it's our physical reality, and basically passed off as a religion called science, so hence scientism. I know that you all get it, you all understand it. You do. And I'm kind of preaching to the converted, if you're already awake to this. But occasionally, do get people who come along and say, you know, they've looked into it, they heard about flat Earth, and of course, like all of us, they thought it was ridiculous, but then they investigated, then they did research, and then they realized, at the very least, someone will realize that what we're talking about is interpretations of the subjective, objective reality, etc. And then you can debate about simulations and all that kind of thing, but that's kind of, yes, you can debate about that, and you can wonder about that and think about that. I mean, yes, we are in a kind of physical. Oh, sometimes my thoughts run ahead of my mouth. It's just they come too fast to be able to kind of get out. But this is it. What I believe we are shown, or is demonstrated to us by looking at the sun, moon and stars, is the very nature of the dualistic nature, the yin-yang, the whole opposite, you can't have one without the other kind of thing, the dichotomy, all that is self-evident to me by looking at the stars. And in a way, this is the message to us. We look at the sky, and we have to be aware that we are the observer. We have to be aware that we're using our eyes. And anytime you try to translate what we see into some kind of map or model, you're facing quite a challenge, because it's an interpretation. It's like any language. You have a word in a language that has a meaning, a very intrinsic meaning to those who speak the language and their culture. Of course, culture and language are, again, intrinsically linked. They go together. They are kind of separate, but they go together. And this is the nature of the reality that we are in. It is surreal. It is subjective, objective at the same time. And so there is no, excuse me, there is no one equation to fit them all, and that's what's so funny. You know, when you have equations such as F equals ma, then of course what has been done there is to translate or condense the physics that we have, which is using an external force to push something along. Like this car is being pushed along by a number of external forces, right? So it's getting pushed along, and but its mass creating its weight in the medium of air is not an external force. But because we've got F equals ma and this understanding that usually to push something along you need an external force, the leap of faith is then made to say that, well, the car has mass and it has weight. The car has weight because its mass is being pulled towards the Earth by an external force. And this is what they use. They use the fact it's monkey science. And it makes a mockery of the wondrous, the wonder of this place, because what they do is they say, well, we drop a ball through the air, and because we can measure it, we say that's what's happening up in the sky, and we are also basically everything's falling through the sky, infinite space, and we're falling with it is insane. So you have to have this idea of a vacuum of infinite space. I mean, we've apparently been falling through infinite space for billions and billions of years, going nowhere at incredible speeds. It's totally insane. But just think about it. Think. Oh. Falling through infinite space for billions of years. Going nowhere. Everything's falling. Ah, we're all falling. And what's funny is people then use things like they talk about like, okay, use the vomit comet for example, when liquids or whatever all mixed together in 0G, or what do they like to call it, microgravity. So while everything's falling, it's not settling. It's just falling through the air, and it's all, liquids will mix together. So, well, that's proof that that's proof of gravity, and we live on a globe. No, because if we were on a globe that was spinning and whizzing through space, then nothing would settle. Everything would be mixed up, just as it is when you've got stuff, liquids and things mixed up in a bottle in 0G environment where you're basically falling. Yeah, so they use things falling through the air as a way of proving gravity. But we're supposed to be falling through the air too, at ridiculous speeds, and speeds that are faster than the rate of acceleration. And of course, where does the rate of acceleration stop? Do you assume and presume that the rate of acceleration just goes on forever? But that's the thing, isn't it? Having this number, 9.8 meters per second. This is why they were so fixated on being able to measure the rate of acceleration that something will be dropped, because then they have a number to create their mathematical model. Yeah, and give you the F equals ma, and make you assume that something falling through the air is doing so because of an external force rather than its own mass. So of course you can come up with speculation and assumptions that the moon is some kind of less dense mass, so it doesn't have such a strong attractive force, etc., etc. Actually, I'm going to take you outside. We're going to go and have a look at a flat Earth map. This is an international school in Phuket, Now, parents pay the equivalent to the price of a new car for each term that their kids come here. Where is it? I've got to go over here. Maybe I shouldn't reveal the name of the school, but I'll reveal the insignia. There you go. Look at that. Yeah. Kind of interesting. So of course Antarctica's not there, but you know this is almost. So here you have everything apparently in proportion. Yeah, it's Australia down there. So you could have Antarctica as a continent down there, and there it is. You know, it's south of Africa, south of South America, and south of Australia. Anyway, I gotta go. All right, I hope it's been fun. It has been for me. Thank you very much.